Hello, everyone. My name is Wes Asmal. Welcome to the 200th episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. Now, remember that we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So, for those who are listening on the podcast, please leave a rating. Now, if you're watching us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. So, to celebrate our 200th episode, we are re interviewing our very first guest from all the way back in 2020. He actually helped me start my content creation journey by giving me practical tips on getting started on LinkedIn and finding content. So, my guest for this week is Jason Luboyera, a digital marketing and digital communication specialist. He's a former founder, a CEO, and head of growth. Jason, thanks so much for joining me today.
Tooways, thank you, my man. This is such it's a good moment. It's a good moment to just put it into perspective. It's very true. Uwais and I actually go back in terms of even working together. So we worked together in a startup, and Uwais wasn't your typical CA. So I left, and then, like you mentioned, we did a bit of work together in 2020, and now look at you, Uwais. It's crazy. Like I have to commend you. Like honestly, Mr. Consistency. Like you are Mr. Consistency to me.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, for those who missed that first interview 4 years ago, thankfully, tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Jason Lubuyera? Give us that backstory.
Okay, so I'm a traveler. I'm a recent podcaster. I'm a sports fanatic. But the finer details is my mom is from South Africa and my dad is from Uganda. And I think why I have to mention that is they've given me a privilege of coming from an interesting African background, but they also gave me a further privilege of being able to travel the world. I lived in Germany for about 13 years. I came back to South Africa, then left again, studied overseas, studied in Spain and America, and all of that traveling, meeting new people, alone, with friends, with partners. It put together what I now call a bit of a not a pavement special, but a very very special picture, which has put me into a place where I love to work with different entrepreneurs, helping them, listening, and making sure that their dreams of doing good business is realized through marketing. And that's a little bit about me. But otherwise, now, if the simple terms, I'm living in Cape Town, not too far from your ways. Peace.
That's a very, very short brief, but outside of work?
Outside of work, like I said, I've taken on podcasting, which I really love. It's also inspired by you, but funny enough, when I started the podcast last year this time, I realized podcasting takes so much energy. Like I thought I was diving into something that's just going to challenge me. I always trying to take a little bit of a challenge in terms of either if it's like my mind, if it's my body, if it's my friends, just always trying to level up. So I started my podcast last year, got into episode 6, and realized the caveat is I actually wanted to do them in person, right? So I just had that like standard. I wanted to do them in person. And that made me fall right on my face because, firstly, you got to get the guest out of their working environment for at minimum 2 hours. They got to get to the venue. You've got to record. You've got to have a post production, pre production team. You've got to have a venue. You also got to be a lot more energetic, I feel, because in person, even though it's more personal, it's also energy sapping, right? Because you have to, like, it's like acting. You have to be there. So I restarted it about 5 months ago, and that's something I do quite a bit out of work. I'm always trying to like re-engineer what does this thing look like and what am I really doing. I'm on all socials and things like that. But outside of podcasting, like I said, I love sports. So we just recently finished the rugby season, so touch rugby. Well, 1 or 2 seasons in a row, and this season we came third, which I don't know. Like I do know why, but we don't need to get into that. Like right, that's not what I would love to get into now. And otherwise, yeah, friends and family, and yeah, nothing else really. It sounds lame, and I don't want to say that I work too much, and I do work on a lot of different business projects, but that's why I know you specifically said outside of work. That's what those are my pastimes. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now, I mean, you've started a business, you've run a business. Many people in corporate are thinking about starting their own business.
Mm.
Some make the leap and some don't. So, someone who's run their own business for many years, what advice do you have for people who are thinking about starting their own business?
I think it's a good question. I'm trying to relate to why I started giving advice, right? Because there are a lot of who are probably like me, even if I started my business when I was young, but it's about, I find what I would have done differently, and this is the advice I would say is
Ooh, it looks like we've had some technical difficulties there. Maybe Jason will jump on again. I think it's one of the vagaries of having live interviews online is that sometimes these things happen from a technical point of view, and that's probably one of the reasons why you wanted to have in-person interviews, because you can do the post-production, you can cater for things like the internet dropping. And that's one of the things that when you're live, I've experienced the last few times, but you learn to deal with you learn to roll with the punches. And the other one of the reasons that I wanted Jason to be on is because of the so much I've learned so much from him, and it looks like he's jumping back on. So let me just bring him back on board. Jason, you're back with us.
hey, that's so interesting. I could actually hear you. You were, it almost like it kicked me off. I was listening to you talking about, these technical difficulties happen, and that's so funny. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
Where were we? Oh
Let's jump back
yes.
into it. So what advice would I give former myself? So I think before thinking about entrepreneurship itself, because there's a lot of polarization around what entrepreneurship really means. Owning your own time, making more money, being your own boss. All these things are not what's going to happen at the beginning, right? They're not going to happen for the first 2 3 years. So if that is why you are wanting to be an entrepreneur, I would say don't just jump into it, because those you're going to be disappointed. And I also had that when I wanted to start my business. I was like, I want to be my own boss. But the truth is, the moment a client signs on the dotted line, are your boss. And the moment you get two, your boss. So your clients are your boss. So like realizing that entrepreneurship isn't just owning your time, making more money. I think if I have to give advice, like one big thing, think about your customer, fall in love with them, and what problem you're solving. And if you can really articulate that, thinking about the customer and the problem you're solving, and how you could do it differently, but constantly thinking about how am I going to solve the problem, then it's like, oh, I'm going from corporate to solve a problem for a particular person versus I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have the label as entrepreneur, or I want to be my own boss. Or I took, like, there's a lot of stories like, yeah, I'm leaving corporate because, I want to get into business. But have you ever heard someone go, I'm leaving corporate because I want to solve a problem for these clients, for these people? Oh, yeah, I dream about it every day. I've got a little notebook, and I actually tested the product before I even sold it. You can sell a product before you've even made it. You could go to your customer today and be like, I'm thinking about solving this problem because I've seen you every day. You go and take your son to school. You struggle to make him healthy food. So I thought about someone like you. Would this be of value to you? You're starting your entrepreneurship journey, but you're solving a problem for a particular customer. And obsessing around that value for the customer is something that I would advise. And it's so easy to do while you have a 9 to 5, because the moment you start your business, that obsession around the customer is diminished because you've got so many other things you need to do. You need to do sales, you need to do marketing, you need to, yeah, you need to do normal life. But while you're in have a 9 to 5, it's like, how can I use 2 hours of my day, or like they call it side hustles? How can my side hustle time be really into obsessing about the customer and how my new solution will solve a problem for them? Definitely, that's what I would say is some advice.
Okay. And I want to add a little bit of a tweak to the question. So,
Mm.
what was the one thing that you wish you'd known before making the leap into entrepreneurship?
The power of niching. I wish I knew what niching down really means, because I went into building a company around which I started social selling. Like the idea of social selling was the problem I was trying to solve, because I understood that the internet, social media, all these different channels have forced entrepreneurs to up their sales skills. You can't be on social media, you can't have email, you can't be at events. So the pressure for entrepreneurs to socially sell online and in person was a problem I wanted to solve, right? But I was trying to do too much. I was trying to look at Facebook. I was trying to look at email. I was trying to look at LinkedIn. And I at the beginning, I wish I knew, if I did a little bit more research to choose a niche, which now is LinkedIn for me. But if I knew that earlier, I think a lot of the learnings would have been accelerated. And also, I think a lot of it also diminishes your confidence, because when you don't deliver on something that you promise, your entrepreneurship journey goes through a big dip, right? It goes through a dip. And that happens. Like there's no entrepreneur who will tell you that everything I promised, I delivered on. You try your best. And again, there's so many hurdles in the way that a client might have perceived it in a different way. The client might have not shown up. End of the day, it's on you. You have to produce the goods. So I think definitely if I knew more the power of niche, I think it would have been a smoother journey, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
For the audience, we'll be responding to
Oh,
questions towards the end. So please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. Sounded like you had a gem there, so
yeah.
you
And
should give it to us.
another one is the power of networking and being able to ask, right? I think there's this entrepreneur journey, like at the beginning, entrepreneurs, like I was one of them. Like you feel like you need to sell to new customers, right? But you, of course, they say your network is sometimes equated to your net worth, but you have to really double down on that, because sometimes we think as that your network is the people who are immediately going to buy from you. If I started my business and told more of the people who already knew me, but wouldn't have bought from me, but told them about what I'm going into, they have my customers, right? So there's probably 10 more people who are high net individual. They probably have marketing teams, but they could have told their network that, hey, listen to this guy is starting a business. And 10 people telling 10 other people, that's a 10x effect, right? And you just have to at least land 3 of those 20 now who are in your mind. So that's, I think, the power of network. But networking is always like, I need to find someone at the networking event who's going to buy from me. The propensity of someone buying from you at a networking event is so low. You should never actually go to a networking event to sell. No, you should go to a networking event to add value, to find a new friend, find a new partner, um, not to go and sell. You won't close like any like probably a 0.0% chance that someone's gonna buy your stuff at an event. It happens, but like it's so low. So when I started my journey, like anybody who's wanting to start a business, especially if you are in a 9 to 5, The fact that you're in a 9 to 5, you are networked. You are networked. You're more networked than you think. It's just about sitting down and be like, my past clients, the coffees I've had, like my employee, like my team. And of course, there's a trust factor in here that you need to be very aware of. But just thinking about those people who could unsell your services versus buying from them. And there's a psychology around this where US, if I had come to you, and I think I did do it, like I actually sold to you, but like if I had come to you and said, and I don't know why I didn't do it. If I came to you and said, US, I'm so passionate about this business. I've got one or two clients. Is there anyone else in your network that you could refer me to? Don't you feel psychologically almost obliged? But it's our nature as humans to want to help our friends,
Mm.
and that's the key thing. It's like when my friend confidently comes and says, "Hey Jay, you've been in business and everything. Like, I'd love if you know anybody who could use my services. Please, could you pass them on to me?" They're in the back of my mind. And I want to do it because I want brownie points with my friends, because it's like this tit for tat. You're like, oh, when my friends are winning, I'm winning, right? Yeah, so that's a strong, very, very strong way to get your first 5 to 10 clients. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's switch over to personal branding.
Right.
Why are you so passionate about it?
Personal branding isn't anything new. Like, I think because of the internet, personal branding has become a lot more accessible. It's also become a lot more impactful. But personal branding is nothing new. Like before the internet, personal branding were those individuals who were able to publicly speak, were able to share ideas in a way that they became a go-to person, right? They were branding themselves as go-to people, right? And like, to make it quite obvious, um, in the Christian community, right? Pastors personal brand themselves as the person they go to, right? In the sports community, personal coaches brand themselves as the go-to health person, right? So in different communities, even outside of the internet, personal branding has always been there. But why I'm passionate about it now, right? Especially over this time where the internet and LinkedIn, there's this yearning for people to buy from people versus logos and websites, right? And with that in mind, the impact of building your personal brand is so unique when done right. Today, you could go from not knowing the CEO of Pepsi Cola. If you do something right for the maybe a year, you could be sitting in front of the CEO of Pepsi Cola, having only built your personal brand and not a website, not spend thousands of dollars, but of course your time, thousands of hours of your time. But that's where personal branding is becomes so impactful and effective. And that's what I'm so passionate about, because I love seeing how, day-to-day entrepreneurs like myself can use smart marketing to get ahead and realize their value. Because at the end of the day, self-actualization is great. Like, wow, I've come up with this idea, and it's actually helping other people. But going from idea to execution is personal branding. Personal branding sits in that realm where it's like it will drive you into better execution, 100%. Right? Yeah. So
Okay.
seeing that effectiveness is just it does drive me. It does drive me every day. I look at you, Waste. Look at it. Like, think about it. You went from, funny CASA in the workplace, right? And you re-engineered and said, "Hey, wait a minute. I do have a personality. How can I share not everything, but part of me online?" Now you handshaking Gary Vee. right? Gary Vee is your buddy because of your personal brand, right? So yeah,
Great point.
so
No, great point.
yeah, yeah.
I want to switch, well, not switch. Also, we're talking a little bit, you mentioned niche. And some people might say LinkedIn is a small niche compared to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. Why did you decide to focus? Okay, I'm going to choose LinkedIn and not any of those others.
Yeah. B2B sales. I understand and love and am passionate about B2B sales. Why? It's because I feel like I'm pretty good at it, right? And it's something that I've done for the years of my career. And with that, B2B sales happens on LinkedIn. There's a big propensity for you to win good new business to business on LinkedIn. So that's one thing. And another thing is I see social media platforms like countries. Facebook is France. Um, Instagram is Italy. TikTok is America. LinkedIn is, it's Zambia. And if you understand that countries have different cultures, different ways of work, different different demographic, and business is about understanding where your value will work best for which customer, or at least where your value can be presented so your customer can come to you. Think about which country you need to go to then, right? Not because Instagram is it's nice and it's a bigger demographic in terms of like density. No, 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 no. Because myself in France and myself in Zambia, two very different people. Same individual, but I act different. The weather's different. I wear a jacket. In Zambia, I'm out there wearing vests, you know? Even sometimes, you have to be honest, you ways. You tell me the truth, right? When you went to America, did your accent become more South African or less?
That's only because they can't understand you. That's the problem.
But
But
it's
yes,
true. You
yeah.
know what I mean? We can find our South African sisters and brothers in the US after 2 months. You get there and you're like, my guy, what are you what's happened here? The
I know who
accent
you
has
are.
gone one.
I know who you are.
I know who you are. So if we know that psychology, social media platforms are the same. They're exactly the same. Go so why I double down on LinkedIn is because I know business owners have a certain mindset when they're on LinkedIn. I know how much more time they spend on LinkedIn. I know sometimes that business owners wake up before kissing their wives or their husbands. The first thing they will look at is either their email or LinkedIn. So why don't my face pop up and be like, "Good morning," buy my stuff? No, I'm joking. Yeah. So that's why I would say double down on the country that makes most sense.
Oh, makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Now, last question that I thought was very important is why on earth would you think it is a good idea to try to teach an introvert accountant about LinkedIn and content creation? Why did you decide to do that?
So, anyways, we have a background, right? And I think it came from a space where in you're using the words like introverted accountant, and I remember we spoke about this. You are a beautiful character. Like when I met you in person, we've gone running. You've got like very interesting ambitions that don't necessarily box you into introvert, CASA, because there are boxes that CASAs are don't have a personality. An introvert doesn't necessarily know how to put themselves out there. That challenge of what I knew about you and the things that you needed to achieve was personal branding, right? Was content creation. The idea and the execution was personal branding. And I was like, I'm up for at least giving you 30% of the way. And even if it's just a pat on the back. And look at you now, 100%. You found your your voice, right? You found your voice, you found your style, you found your community. And I'm studying you slowly. There's something called 1,000 true fans, and it's a theory of network effects, where basically, if you want to monetize your network, you basically need enough. You need 1,000 people to pay you $100 to basically have a generated income of about $100,000, which is a very much living income. But it doesn't. That's 1,000, but you can have 25,000 paying at a different rate. But all it's trying to say is, if you always had to ask, they would pay. If you always had to drop a jacket, they would pay. If you always had to go for a run, people would join, because you have 1,000 true fans. And I feel like you might be on that journey of hitting that critical mass, which is so beautiful.
I appreciate that. Now, very interesting. But before we end, any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
I think there's an interesting wave happening on like ways of work, starting a business, and project work. So there's freelancer, gig economy, consultant business. More and more, what I'm seeing, and I've spoke to so many different business owners, right? I've even met with like the MD of BlackRock. If you are able to communicate really well, and why did I start with communicate? Because you're not the most important thing in people's lives, right? And if you can't communicate, no one's going to know about you. So you could have the best product, like you can build the best product, but if no one knows about you, or at least at the time when someone wants to know, you can't express yourself or communicate, you've shot yourself in the foot, right? So like communication is like super key, and having ways on how to do it, if it's online, if it's in person. So I think communication is super important, especially more today, because we're so inundated with information, right? So people just want clarity and brevity, and they want to be entertained. So I think there's just this window or this opportunity to communicate better. And then I think thinking about the way of work differently, because why I mentioned I meet with quite a few different entrepreneurs. They just want value. They just need problems to be solved. So you don't have to start a business to go and be of value to a company. Caveat: I closed my business, went to my competitor where I'm a head of growth, and I said, listen, don't employ me, contract me, but make me feel like an employee, because as fast as I come in, as fast as I go out. Little paper, cool, contract done. Oh, it's high risk. It's 100% high risk, but that's the way of work is, because contracting yourself, or at least adding your value to these companies, is the new way of work. Because if you look at Web3, a project gets put up, specialists swarm, and they swarm back. That is going to be the way of work. I think companies are going to be there's going to be a problem. Someone's going to identify it. There's going to be a feasibility study. They're going to make a business plan. You need to be able to swarm to solve a problem, and then swarm out. And if you think like that about entrepreneurship and the way of work, you've got a very exciting way to live. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're running towards the end, and I know the countdown might end. So I unfortunately have to stop it there. But Jason, this has been amazing. It's been great celebrating this with you. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. Jason, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.
Thanks, you guys. That was amazing.